Oklahoma.
Okay, Oklahoma.
All right.
Edmund.
Yeah, Oklahoma City.
All right. Welcome, folks. We just have people coming in from the waiting room here. And I know we'll have just a few more joining us here in the next minute or two. So hang tight for about 30 or 60 seconds and we'll get started. All right. I think we'll go ahead and get underway here. I hate to punish people that show up on time by waiting too long for the ones that are late. So we'll get started. I'm Dave Carter with Flowery Hill Institute, along with Chris Roper, my fellow regional director. This is gosh, I don't know how many of these we've done, Chris, but about once we do these roundtables about once a month. And appreciate everybody that's joining us today for this topic, which is financial record keeping for meat and poultry processors. And this is really a critical topic, as we've talked to some of the folks at USDA and some of the financial institutions that are working with folks that have received some of the grants through MPEP or MCAP or some of the others. They're saying, we're concerned that some of the folks don't have the type of record keeping systems or expertise that is really important for them to stay on top of not only their grant but their overall financial management of their business. So we're really pleased today to have three gentlemen from Food and Livestock Planning with us that have some real expertise in this area, Keith and Matt and Steve. Keith and Matt will be on camera. Steve's down in southern Missouri, so I think that he'll be off camera during this. But they're going to help us kind of walk through this for the next hour. Just a couple of housekeeping issues is we are recording this session. It will be put onto the Flowery Hill website. We archive these, so for those folks that weren't able to be here today, they can download it and watch it at their leisure. We will also be sending out after this two question survey for you. We always like to ask, first of all, what did you think about this session? What could we do better? But then what are some thoughts that you might have on some topics you would like to see us cover as we move forward into 2025? So be looking for that as we come to the conclusion here. So with that, Chris, I'll let you, anything you want to add before we ask these guys to introduce themselves?
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. Good to see many of you again. We know we get to see several of you on many of our webinars. This is a very important topic. We see this throughout a lot of the USDA programs that we work in. This is an important topic. We have to get our finances out of the shoebox. We use that reference a lot, but many of our small businesses, your receipts go into a shoebox or a cardboard box, or maybe they go in a file cabinet. And we've got to get our records into financial statements. We need you to know what your costs are, your operating costs, how do you figure out where your break even?
Yep. Oh, Chris is freezing up on us a bit. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah,
sorry
he's down in southern Missouri, where they haven't been above zero for the last 5 days, I guess, or above freezing. Yeah,
and the sun's shining today, so maybe our satellites don't like sunshine down here. So I'll let the other team introduce themselves, and we'll go from there. Thank you all.
Yep, you bet. So go ahead, Keith. Start us off. You and Matt and Steve, introduce yourselves.
Thank you. Great to be part of this forum today. My name is Keith DeHaan. I'm the managing principal of Food and Livestock Planning Incorporated. I live in Kansas City. This company's been in existence since the year 2000, so it's been around a while. And of interest is that Dave Carter, part of Flower Hill, was a client of mine when he was running another company or another business, I guess. So I got to know Dave. That was many, many years. That was early in the tenure of Food and Livestock. So appreciate his friendship and his business association. I've been in the packing business since the year 1995. I've been with three fairly large packing companies. One was I was the president and starting of a restart of a company, of which I'm still a minority owner. Our company specializes in startup and startovers in the packing industry, meat processing industry. And we get to work with lots and lots and lots of either producer-owned entities or just business starting entities in the meat processing business, of which getting data captured, getting records set up, getting this business account set up, et cetera, et cetera. So we get a chance, an opportunity to get involved in like the early stages of a lot of these projects, of which we're very, very fortunate to do. So that's my background, and I think I'll let Matt and Steve share a little bit about themselves.
So my name is Matt Gibson. I work with Keith and have been working with Keith off and on for 35 years. This time working with food and livestock planning for the last 5 years. My background is in both livestock production as well as direct to human food production in meat and grain. Have also worked for pharmaceutical companies, fine chemical companies, those sort of things. And within food and livestock planning, I'm the one who does most of the financial modeling to create pro formas so people can write business plans before they begin operations. But we also do those after people have been operating as well. People, as Dave said, they might keep their receipts in a shoebox and kind of have a money comes in and then a miracle happens, black box, and then stuff comes out the other side. And so we will also analyze those as well. So that's my background. I do have a PhD in livestock nutrition, animal nutrition.
Go ahead, Steve,
All right.
bring it home.
All right, let's all go home. No, my name is Steve Ballinger. I'm the new addition to food and livestock planning. I'm a technology and data specialist. I've got 30 years in IT and 16 years now working in the meatpacking industry. I'm doing working with, data collection, bringing the technology and the data collection out there on the floor, bringing reporting together, writing custom programs, things along those lines. So, yeah, here to help.
Great. Thank you, guys. So, yeah, let's just start it off. I mean, moving beyond the shoebox, just give us a quick overview. What would be the essential elements of a good financial record keeping report for a meat or poultry processor? What's got to be in there?
Go for it, Keith. If you're talking basically standard, financial reporting that almost any business is going to need, you have your inventory, your assets, your liabilities, all of that you're going to be tracking. But go ahead, Keith.
Well, obviously, you do need kind of a baseline, just standard financial records. And of course, that into balance sheet, cash flows, and income statements. I mean, that's what you really need to do on a pro forma basis, and that's what Matt does, as he said, day in and day out, every day. He's building those for clients, because we need to project. Obviously, we need to project what the opportunities are and what the business is capable of producing as far as return on investment, et cetera. So a lot of his work gets shared with lenders, because that's obviously lenders want to look at first thing they want to look at your financial statements and your performance. So that's kind of what we build. We obviously need, as Steve said, you've got to be able to track inventory. Sometimes that's just a human count with your eyeballs and a calculator and a pencil. And a lot of clients still do that. But today and this is one of Steve's roles, is that he recommends programs that are pretty user-friendly and they don't break the bank. And he helps guide, and they will help guide you. Those programs will help guide you in the kind of record keeping that is necessary. It is hard to find. We know this. It's hard to find accounting help on a perishable business. And if you can find some that have a little experience with a perishable business, put your arms around them and keep them. Don't let them go anywhere, because they are hard to find. They are very, very difficult to find. It's a little different than just standard business. It's different than farming. It's different than just about anything, because you got a product that goes bad, and obviously, everything that you keep in inventory doesn't stay as the value that you place on it. So you have to handle that. You got to account for it. You got to manage around it. But one thing that we always work on with especially new clients is managing cash. Cash is king, and if you are, I guess, not very clear on what you're doing, you can waste a lot of cash starting up a business and running your business. And that's sad. I mean, it really is sad. A lot of times clients don't really know better until they actually get into the gymnasium, they start playing ball. They don't recognize where they have wasted some cash. So we really try to help and try to work with clients to make sure they're not stepping on landmines, because landmines burn cash. And oftentimes hopefully that you're working with lenders that understand a little bit of that and will let you operate with money, whether it's your own capital or whether it's lender capital, and you can weather the storm around that. But really, you do need guidance. You do need guidance to help keep from burning through your cash too quickly, and being able to reserve enough cash to pay bills and pay taxes. You always have to pay taxes, especially payroll taxes. You don't mess with payroll taxes. The first thing that gets paid is payroll taxes. So you have to make sure you can do that, and to make sure you have enough cash in the business to run. Matt, do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I would add is basically where Steve started and you addressed it, and I kind of hit on it just a little bit, is that if you're up and running, you need to have a good program which can track all the details. Having a steer come in and then a black box and meat go out, and you don't know where all of the resources have gone, and you don't know which parts of that animal are making you the most money. That is a big part of being successful, being able to document, track exactly where all the resources are going, where your revenue is coming from, where your costs are coming from, and being able to track all of that and document all of that.
Let me just segue a little bit. And before I do, one of the things I forgot to mention, those of you that are online, as you have questions, type them into the Q&A there. And Chris and I kind of watch that as it goes, and we'll feed those questions along. So don't be shy about typing in your questions. But yeah, when you talk, Matt, about animal coming in and meat going out, and what's in between, when we were kind of planning this and visiting with you guys, Keith alluded to you're a perishable business, but what are some of the key elements for like a meat processor that they've got to be able to attract when that animal comes in and before the meat goes out?
I'm gonna let Steve kind of take a first crack at that. This is what he does. This is exactly what he does. So I'm gonna let Steve take a crack at that first, and then Keith, you might want to jump in after Steve. Steve?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of times you're tracking, you're going to have your animal costs. So you're going to have the cost for what you're purchasing to bring in. Whether you're doing a slaughter facility, or if you're fabrication only, you still got to track the cost of what it is that you're bringing in to run through your process. Of course, your payroll system and everything is going to track a lot of your labor hours. You will have some type of purchase order tracking that you're going to do for your other materials. And then you'll track your water usage and things along those lines. Some of those things that you're also looking to track on your production floor, not necessarily going to be tracked inside of a financial system, but it's part of the overall financial picture. Because you want to take a look at things like, what does the animal weigh when it gets there? How much of that animal are you actually putting in the cooler? And then when it comes out of the cooler, how much weight are you possibly losing when you have it sitting in there for a while? Are you doing a dry age? Are you doing a wet age? Is it a 48-hour turnaround? Are you holding it for a week? What are you doing with it? So you want to track that type of shrink. And then you've got the actual production side. How much total carcass weight are you bringing to the floor? And how much of that is making it to the boxes for the product that you're selling? So you've got that yield tracking that's going to go on in there. And a lot of places will use USDA reporting as far as when they go to sell the product. So they'll help use that as a baseline for trying to sell the product out once it's cut, packaged, and ready for sale. But like I said, a financial system, like a QuickBooks or a Sage type accounting program, is not necessarily going to track a lot of what happens on the floor. The financial program is looking for all of your costs, all of your expenses, and that's your payroll, that's your box, that's your bag, that's your labels, all that type of stuff.
Well, and we've already had two questions popped up right away. There, I was going to save this toward the end, but that's a couple of folks have already asked. So, are there any particular software programs or packages that specialize in butcher plants, or that you find helpful? And we have folks all across the spectrum. We have very small folks on here, and some that are larger. So, are any of them more attuned to a smaller plant or a larger plant?
So there are a couple of companies out there that do have programs that they've designed to or for facilities. Unfortunately, there's no one size fits all. Everybody's a different size. Everybody does things a little bit different, even though the process is the same to take them apart. But everybody still does different things across the floors. So for a smaller facility, you have a program like Merit Tracks or Vista Tracks, which is designed for those smaller plants. But once you start ramping up in head, a lot of your larger facilities actually will have custom programs that they've written to their processes in order to track that information. I mean, if you take a look, one that comes to mind right off the top of my head that I know of is like Washington Beef, who they have programmers that sit in-house, and that's what they work on. They wrote their own program to do everything from receiving all the way through to the sale. But a lot of those programs do not have accounting built into it. Accounting gets a lot more in depth than a lot of the people that write the programs for the processors want to do. So they'll export invoices for you to be able to bring into programs like QuickBooks.
I will add, Steve, that the Merit Tracks and the other that you mentioned, they have it. Does it communicate with an inventory control program too?
Normally, and right, those two that I mentioned have their own inventory program and an order entry program in there. Yeah, and the case labeling. So that stuff is built into those programs, along with one that we're working on right now. But yeah, so a lot of those will have that built in. And then there's companies like Aspen Systems has a program out. They're not so much on the front end of the receiving and the harvest information, but they're more on the back end. They're more your inventory, your orders, and tracking that.
Correct. So this is a shameless plug, and we apologize right out of the chute, but Steve is pretty skilled at these kind of systems, and we are developing our own. So mainly just to fill gaps where they exist today, you mentioned it, kind of in between the small guys and the larger guys is kind of where things fall through the cracks. And we're trying to build a system that is capable of one of the small to medium sized plant managing both record keeping and inventory control and tracking data through a plant. And while I'm talking about data capture, we always talk about, well, where do you capture the information? There's two key, obviously, and this is an obvious comment, that the hot weight is the most important in the plant, and the next most important in the plant is the box scale. So now you know what the animal is as a harvested weight goes into the coolers, and then obviously you know everything that's merchandisable. The weight that's merchandisable is the box weight, and of all the products leaving the plant. So you have to make sure you got good scale systems there. A cold scale's nice, man. It's really nice because now you know if you're gaining or losing weight in the coolers, and even having some scales along the fab line kind of really help. But they do take a little more time to be able to weigh and be able to capture that data and record back to see what it really means. You notice I didn't mention a live scale. I'm going to give you my bias. I don't like them. They're not, they'll do more lying to you than they will actually accurately predicting what an animal weighs, especially in this time of year in the spring. Man alive, it's crazy for a live weight. Now, I realize you have to do it in times because there's a lot of times there's pay weights or live weight pay weights. I don't like that either. But nevertheless, I just wanted to share with you, you don't have to have a live scale. You don't have to have one. The most accurate weight you have is the hot carcass weight. And if you have a live weight, fine, great, that's great. The more information, the better. But nevertheless, it isn't all that a critical weight as your hot weight.
A lot of places that I've been, instead of capturing an individual live weight, they'll capture a lot weight. So you'll see a
There you
truck
go.
scale at facilities that will weigh empty and then weigh with the animals on board.
I'm
I know
glad
you
you
were
guys
waiting to
brought
say
that.
something. Yep.
Yeah, the
Yep.
yields are so important. Whether you're a custom processor that can relay that yield data to their customer to let their customer know how their animals are performing or their hang times are performing, or et cetera, or you're a commercial customer that's doing hundreds of animals a year, you need to know what your yields are. There are optimum weights on animals, whether it's beef, bison, or pork. You have optimum weights on cuts. You need to understand how your decisions in business to do bone-in cuts, boneless cuts, grinding, seasonality. Yields change throughout the season and throughout customer demands and through the various cuts that you might see. You really, really, really need to know what your yields are per animal and be able to track that. And if nothing else, if you're a custom processor on the call, being able to relay that very important information of why an animal came in at a certain weight and why they got a certain weight back in a box. You need to be able to show and track where the product shrinks, loses weight, loses moisture, and how those yields affect. And the difference between a 900-pound animal and a 1,600-pound animal. Lots and lots of yield percentage variations that you will see throughout your plant. And if you have a good record-keeping system, you will be able to show not only your staff and your team, but your customers on how those decisions affect the finished product coming out of your plant. So I wanted to thank you all for bringing that up. And then the next comment I wanted to bring up is how this all even ties to the risk management webinar and discussion we had a few months back. If you have good data and good inventory and good information on file, if you have a disaster or if you have a major issue happen at your plant, you're going to have accurate records on what is in the plant, what left the plant, what came in. There's lots and lots of reasons to have good records. So I just wanted to bring those up, and thank you all for bringing up the topic of yields.
And let me just add too, because I'll do a little bit of a shameless plug here, Keith. But on our on our online toolkit, in our resource directory, we do have some folks that have developed some ERP systems and the like, and for various skills. We don't we haven't vetted them. We can't, attest to the validity of them. But yeah, so there are some options out there. Boy, Chris, we've had questions rolling in pretty quick on this one today. The Elliot says, what would you need to track differently as a custom white label USDA processor versus someone who is just buying and selling?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Um, USDA is going to look a lot more at the traceability. Basically, when you're dealing with them, their big thing is that you can go from the end product that you sold, go all the way back through the process to be able to do like a trace back to the producer that you got it from, or producers that may be involved if you're doing like a big combo or something of trim or ground beef. So being able to keep that information all the way through is going to be really important on the USDA side. For your own uh, for your own sake, I mean, you actually kind of want to be at that level anyway. You'd want to know what came in just in case there was a problem. Um, I've generally go through in facilities that I've been in, will run tests. Basically, I'll run my own recall just to go through and make sure that I can get back to where we need to get back to as, for the plant. And that's something that you probably want to try and do for yourself as well. Keep a good record of what comes in when, assign that an ID number, know the order that you're bringing the carcasses to the floor, know the orders that you're going to go through and do your harvest for the day or your fabrication for the day. The sort becomes really important if you're doing USDA grading, because you're going to mix up lots, obviously, as you go through, because you're not going to take, you know, Keith's cattle that have only three choice, two prime, and the rest are select, and run everything through the floor like that, run all of his cattle at once, because that would just mean a lot of changes on the floor. Because then to run mats behind it and go through the same changes again, you're just tying up time. So, of course, for the sake of efficiency, you'll bring all of the prime out, you'll bring all the choice out, so on and so forth.
I'm just going to add to Steve's, because I think he hit that right on the nail. Historically, if you were in the custom exempt business, they pay on carcass weight so much per pound. Obviously, they pay per head and they pay hot carcass weight. So it's important for the processor to get a fairly good accurate weight, because that depends their paycheck depends on it. But whereas when you got into actually merchandising meat, buying and processing meat, then you become more sophisticated. What I think Steve hit it is right. You shouldn't be much different. You should try to do, even if you're just a custom processor, it's very important for you to collect just about as much information. I mean, you need it to get the confidence of your customers. And obviously, you need to provide them as much data as you have. It's because it's their animals. They get it all back, and they should have accurate weights to go with them. So the philosophy should be about the same.
Right. Well, we have somebody that asked, you mentioned Sage, and they just recently heard about it, and they want to know a little bit more. Is it a plug-in to QuickBooks, or how does it operate?
Sage is its own program. It's on the higher end of accounting systems, but it's a financial software, and there are companies that have gotten Sage in for its basic accounting, and then they'll do a lot of customization with it once they get that software. But it is a totally different, totally separate accounting package.
What do we got, Chris?
Yeah, you want to answer a couple more of these while we're on that topic? One of the others is QuickBooks sufficiently robust to serve as the financial system for a smaller plant?
Yes, and for your smaller plants, yes. Yeah, I couldn't tell, I couldn't even give you an idea on where that cutoff might be. Um, but yes, for smaller plants, I think my experience has been that QuickBooks has been okay for doing for handling your accounting.
And you probably
there's a lot
know
of
this
handwork.
if you're dabbling in QuickBooks, there's two different programs for QuickBooks. There's online and there's desktop, and the desktop keeps all your records. You keep it, you have it, it's in your computer, it's only yours, nobody else sees it. Online, you can pass it around to your accountants, et cetera, and so forth. They work very differently, very, very differently. And so wherever you start, it's hard to get cross-trained. Believe me, I've been there. It is difficult. So just make sure that if you select QuickBooks, fine. It's very good record keeping or a very good bookkeeping program. But you got to keep in mind that they're two completely different systems.
But both of them will still generate your income statements, your balance
Yep,
sheets. It'll still give
they
you
will.
those financial reports.
Yeah, they just work differently is all.
And I might add too, the QuickBooks is not, it's kind of apples and oranges with, the other like VistaTrack and other
Yeah.
softwares because you don't have traceability built into QuickBooks, inventory software. You can enter inventories manually, just like a regular spreadsheet program. But you need to be careful about that. Your traceability, risk management, yield documentation, totally different.
Yeah,
So,
that should
uh,
be on the ERP side for
yeah.
what you're using across your floors and doing your sales so that all that ties together easier.
Right. If you're a custom processor, it works really well for charging, invoicing customers and accounts receivable. Works really nice. It works really nice there, but there are other programs that do the same thing. But if you're merchandising meat, it becomes a little, I think one of the other programs may be a little bit better because then it does tie into, it dives into record keeping. It'll tie in a little bit better into inventory control.
I think the next question here that we hit before we continue on is, can you use live weight or truck weight to determine potential losses or yield losses? Can you speak to your experience on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer that, and my colleagues can jump in. Of course they can. Of course they can. They sure can, because obviously you know what approximate live weight is, and then you got the hot carcass weight. The difference is the dressing percent. So that's a yield in itself. And then of course, when you go from the coolers, the carcass coolers into the box, there's another yield that you can account for as well. But my only criticism, just so that you fully understand this, that when you do a live weight, you've got a lot of error built in. You've got gut fill, rumen fill that's 45 to 70 pounds of rumen fill and urine, bladder. You've got ice, snow, manure hanging on. You got ice hanging off tails. So you've got a lot of noise in a live weight, a lot of noise, just so that you recognize that and understand that. A lot of people will use a pencil shrink, which is good. But even with a pencil shrink, there's just so you understand, there's a lot of air too. So you really have to ask yourself from that, going from live to a hot carcass weight yield, a dressing percent is another name. Obviously, it's another name for it. What is that really important? It's nice to compare them over the year to understand what's happening to your animals over the course of a year. So make it from a comparison standpoint. But I never get too excited or about dressing percents just from a raw number standpoint, because there is a lot of error in it. That's my only point.
We could
Matt,
probably do,
go ahead.
we
Yeah,
could probably do
Joe,
a whole other webinar on yields and percentages, I'm sure, and software for that matter. But if you all would
Yep.
like to see that or one of those, please fill that out in your survey too. We do listen and watch those.
yeah, we could do that, Chris. And to Keith's point, everything that Keith said is impacting your dressing percent and your live weight. But Keith, I would offer up that there is a huge amount of variation within a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So if you've got 10 animals coming in that weigh 1450 live, and there can be, like you said, the gut fill can range easily by 100 pounds between any two of them. And so that's a big problem dealing with live weight. And that's whenever we're doing university research trials with feedlot steers, that's why you hold them off a feed, weigh them 2 days back to back, all that sort of thing. But you don't get that whenever you're coming straight out of a feedlot straight to the packing plant. And so you've got all kinds of variabilities built in. I would just add that live weight per animal is just not valuable.
Yeah, and to further what they were saying, if you go through and you do have a pencil shrink that you're going to do and you apply it consistently, you can also take a look at that just to see how the animals that you're getting from any particular producer also go for you. So, especially if you're buying by live weight.
You're on mute, Dave.
You guys have addressed, lots a couple of times, and Chris referred back to one of our risk management roundtables, but also one of those we talk about with Hasselplan is defining what your lots are going to be for your plant, and particularly when it comes into if you're ever going to have a food safety recall, issue, how big or how small of a lot you want to have. So that's part of developing this whole mindset of this as you go forward. Gosh, so Regine here, she noted that QuickBooks, we were talking about QuickBooks desktop versus the cloud, and her observation is that the desktop's not going to support payroll much longer if they are at all. And I don't know if you guys have got some familiarity with that, but seems to imply, you really need to look more at the cloud system there.
I agree. No, I agree with that comment. I do. They'll both do payroll. When there's a fee, you obviously have to pay a fee to do that for each one to do payroll. But my experience is the cloud base or the online base is a little easier, better for payroll. It seems to me. And that's one person's experience.
We want to hit one more, Dave, before we go to another topic, maybe?
Yeah, because we've been talking about the software requirements and what's applicable for a small plant or a larger plant. Keith, somebody says, how do you define small versus large? What would be your threshold or segue there?
Tell you what, that is so subjective, and we in our own company, we kind of have our own. We understand, I think, what the USDA's version of that is, and we when we do our writings or business planning, we kind of define that. But within our own framework, we typically we kind of break ours down to most custom exempt plants are in the very small size, and that means anywhere between 1 and 15 head per week is kind of the very small. And we don't have a lot of those clients. Yeah, we dabble in it a little bit. Then when you get probably about 15 head per day and more of beef equivalents, of course, hogs, we figure 3 to 4 times as far as hogs and lambs are concerned. But when you get into at least above, I'd say 20 or 20 above, then we get into the small plants. And then the medium size, we don't really kick in till we figure, I don't know, Matt, we figure around 300 a day to 500 a day. That was a kind of a medium size. And then the large plants are in that 1,000 to 2,000 range. And then the ultra plants are the multiple site plants as the, national Tyson and so on, so forth. Those are the ultra large. Matt, do you have any difference of opinion on that? No. Okay.
We want to take one. We have our friend Rebecca asked a question. What would you all say is the minimum viable throughput for a newly built plant in 2025 in beef numbers?
Rebecca, I expected that from you. I really did. So thanks for asking that question. And the reason she's asking that, she gets probably hit on that probably 50 times a week, something like that. So she gets that question a lot. Matt, our master modeler, Matt, is going to answer that question officially for the group.
Okay, it depends, Rebecca, as I know you are well aware of. It depends, and so we're describing this for the group. The minimum size depends upon on what sort of value added products you're producing out of the plant. So if you are producing maximum value added products for every, we're gonna talk about beef equivalents here. So one beef equivalent equals 3 hogs or 4 lambs, whatever. But on a beef equivalent basis, if you are maximizing, absolutely maximizing everything you can, maximizing the smokehouse products, jerky, snack sticks, ground hamburger, steaks, roasts, portion cutting. And then if you are also doing some retail, having a retail upcharge of, let's just throw out a number, 33%, okay, on part of that product, then it's quite easy to show a positive net income at probably 12 to 15 head, okay? But as soon as you start taking any one of those bits and pieces away, then the break even really in 2025, the break even is really somewhere between 23 and 25 head per day. Okay, and that's with some value added. So some snack sticks, some, brats and sausage and jerky and steaks and those sort of things. Okay. So you really need to be at 23 to 25 for maybe 22 would be break even. And that's with some value added, but not maximizing your value added. We have done some projects here recently where people are absolutely maximizing they're scratching out every penny that they can from every value added product. And they're actually quite profitable at half of that, somewhere around 11 or 12 head. Very, very profitable at those really low levels. But you've got to maximize and scratch for every penny you possibly can. Otherwise, it's 22 is the break even, 23 to 25 to start cash flowing.
And part of that, Matt, as we do over the years, that number increases because of just the cost associated with our business has increased so dramatically over the last 4 years. It didn't used to be that way, Rebecca. It didn't. In fact, I think you probably could take this down. I'm not saying half of what Matt said, but 4 years ago, when Matt joined us and he was pretty heavy in the modeling side, it wasn't anything like it is today. It's just everything costs more. It does. Materials cost more, raw materials cost more, labor costs more. Obviously the plants cost more. Everything, interest rates. So his comment is break even is based on net income.
Yeah. And what Keith said 5 years ago, whenever I came back and joined Keith this time, to have a net income of $0, it was around 11 or 12 head of throughput. But today it's 22 minimum.
And I would say that you could add another variable in there of what type of plant people are building. Dave and I see some people want a showpiece where they're going to teach classes and have restaurants and retail shops, and it's much more than just a basic processing plant. And I think you should all, we all have to qualify that, if you're adding all of these other components to meat processing, there are many other variables that have to be addressed to see where your break even is going to be. So keep that in mind as well.
Good point.
Just for those of you online, the conversation here with Rebecca. Rebecca is heads up the Niche Meat Processing Assistance Network, which is part of our technical assistance network here. So that's why we're having this. Yeah, the conversation is so helpful. I want to ask just one question here before we get to some of the others that are online here. But we talked about knowing what your costs are and the information that program needs to give you. what's a banker going to be looking for in your financial statement when you go to the lender? What are the key elements there that you need to have for them to be able to see and understand?
Matt, you want me to take that or do you want to take
All
that?
right, why don't you take it, Keith, and then I'll jump in and add if anything needs.
One of the interesting things that we do, I'm not going to give more clarification than just say it's interesting, is working with lenders and bankers with hand in glove with the clients. It's kind of educational, but obviously the number one thing they are looking at is when are they going to get paid back for their investment. So a lot of our work is when does the plant able to self-finance and cash flow. If they're able, whenever they're able to self-finance, bankers get pretty excited because that means they're all paid back. They've got all their investment is back in their hands. And so they're always looking for, and what we do routinely is what point in time does the plant cash flow with its own money? And we didn't, Matt and myself are scientists. We're certainly not CPAs, but we play one on TV, or we have one that part-time on our staff that's helped us divide the formulations of how to determine when that is. And so that's extremely helpful to our clients to find out with all the assumptions given, when does the plant start self-financing, running off its own, being able to finance itself without the banker's money or without any short-term loans. You want to add to that, Matt?
I'll toss out two other pieces just really quick. Dave, you didn't directly ask this, but you're sort of referring to it a little bit, and I'll just add a little bit of color to what Keith said. Is we deal with a lot of bankers for clients. We will talk to their bankers or their lenders or their investors and help them understand what the business plan is showing, what the financial pro forma is showing. And we deal with a lot of lenders who are they will come right out and say that they're pretty ignorant when it comes to packing plants. They know all about lending for tractors or seed or land or fuel or whatever, but they'll say, I'm looking at a business plan here with all these financials and I have no idea what I'm looking at. And, if you were asking for, a loan for seed, no problem. So that's one thing I would toss out is there, when you have a business plan in place, you are educating your lenders and your investors. That's a big part of it. You use that to educate them, not just show. What Keith said is very important. They want to know when it's going to cash flow. That's their number one question. But then they don't know what they're looking at, and you're using that to educate them. So that's really kind of the real take home there. And then the other thing that we do a lot of is that we see that lenders really like is we use data that is not really arguable. Okay. We don't use next Thursday's futures for cattle prices. Okay. Because they change between now and next Thursday. The Thursday's futures change between now and next Thursday. So we don't use that. Because a lot of lenders they're a little gun shy about opinion type data. They want verifiable, published, open, transparent kind of data. They're not really interested in what are the December futures for corn showing. They want to know where did you get this and how did you come up with it? And can they verify it on their own? Yes, you can verify the data on your own. If you follow these steps, boom, you'll come up with the same answer we did.
Well, Matt, that's so critical, because Chris and I run into that a lot with as we're working with folks. They're going, yeah, I'm working with my bank, and if I was buying a tractor, they'd be right there, but they just don't have a clue what I'm doing. So that's really critical. So I know only got about 10 minutes left, so probably we ought to go through these questions here. Martin says, does the inventory program integrate a point of sale system? Some inventory is retail and other could be custom. How can that work in one program?
Yeah, you can. There are some out there that do have a point of sale built in so that the inventory that's going to it uh, is available for retail. It's available for you to do wholesale. I mean, however you want to do it. There are a couple of programs that are written that way. I believe I believe Merit Tracks has a point of sale in theirs. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember off the top of my head.
I'll add a couple things to that. In my experience, we see a lot of people that are trying to integrate website sales back to point of sales, back to inventory, back to invoicing, back to everything else. It's very hard to find a system that talks amongst all of them. So
Right.
some people use Square and Clover and all these different things for retail sales and web sales. But from my experience, they don't talk back to some of the plant software, um, where it's very important to, you have an inventory system and then you have a retail system or a web-based system where you're selling by weight or by item. You get a lot of pushback between different types of software where they don't record data the same way, and then you don't do sales the same way that you might do inventory tracking in a meat plant. So keep that in mind when you're setting up your systems or if you're trying to do these different things. It's retail sales and retail softwares are definitely a different beast than what your plant software is, and they're just designed differently.
Correct. And you can normally hit up a technology person that can at least do some type of a sync between what you're producing out of there to update the available inventory for your website. But no, to Chris's point, no, there's not one that I know of that would run out to the website at all. At least not that I've seen yet.
While we're on software questions here, this says what software system or type of software system would be best for a multi-species slaughter plant that also processes wild game?
So you're gonna do custom and okay, and the cow and a
Here,
lot of your smaller the smaller ones that I've seen, the smaller software packages, I think lend themselves a little bit more flexibility than some of the larger ones written out there. I mean, but for the most part, how you control a lot or how you define it in your system uh, can be a cow, can be a pig, can be a deer that you're bringing in for processing. Along those lines. So as long as you're controlling how it moves across your floor, a lot of the systems will allow you to set up at least what the type of animal is that you're bringing in.
That includes within species too, Steve. So if you got a Holstein versus an Angus, you can segregate that information as well, just like you can between a deer and a pig.
Correct.
Josh wants to go back to the throughput of where your cost of production is. He said 22 a day. Is that a custom process or a cutting marketing box beef? Yeah.
That's cutting, you own them. You own them and you take custody of them, you own the title, you buy them and you're selling it out as box beef plus all of the other value added bits and pieces that are coming out of that. If you're just doing straight custom, then there's really not an answer for that because we don't know what your custom fee is. If it's $400 a head versus $700 a head, unless we know those kinds of numbers, there's no way to predict that sort of break even.
Yeah. And I would
For a custom product that-
Yeah, reach out, Josh, and we can work with you one-on-one, and reach out to anyone that's on the call and we can dive into that one-on-one.
Yeah, that's one again where Chris mentioned earlier, the type of facility that you have and all of that is really important. And the baseline on any of this is you need to understand what your cost to processing an animal. Once you know that, then if you can put fees on top of it to to sell that back to the customer or whatever, you're going to make money. But you just got to know what it's costing you to process that animal. So, Regine here heard you talk about roast as added value. She's wondering how can you explain how a roast is an added value product. I think I know the answer to that one, but I'll let you guys tackle it. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's anything particular in just the name roast. It's anything you take from obviously the roast is either going to come from the chuck and the round. Let's just call it, let's just talk a chuck roast. Obviously, if you're going to actually sell it for that purposes, you got to take it, trim it up. So now the added value is you're trimming it for a particular a sale item. Maybe it's a retail item, etc. So the box product is just a chuck a chuck cut. Could be a variety of different chuck cuts, and the retail product is the actual trimmed up, crock pot ready or pot ready chuck roast, and that would be probably around a 4 pound, 3 to 4 pound roast. So now you've added value by trimming it up and getting it ready so that then whoever purchases that is ready to throw it in a crock pot or into a pan with a good recipe, and away you go.
Well, and I would just add two things. Number one, this segues in the value added producer grant is out there, folks. And when you talk about qualifying, you have to be a producer to qualify for that. But if you're a producer that also processes, cutting meat is considered adding value to it. So
True,
that's part of it. But
true.
when we talk about roast, also, one of the things that we've been working with folks on is the opportunity to get some increased value from some heat and eat products. You can take a roast and put some marinade in with it, and
Oh yeah.
market that to couples that are time compressed these days. It's a good way for you to take a lower quality cut and get some higher value. So again, that's where Chris and I are doing a lot of work with folks on that. So
And I'll
um,
add too, Dave, one of the big things when we talk about grants is we have to have financial statements and financial projections, and we have to have bookkeeping and record keeping to be able to apply for USDA grants these days. It's not as simple just to say, I want to do this and this is why. They're looking for financials. They're not just projections, but if you have an existing business with historical data, they want to see your past performance and know that you're successful. So the only way we can do that is to have financial statements and record keeping. And that's the point of our roundtable discussion today. We want to help you get there. We want you to be there so that you can take full advantage of every opportunity, whether that's added value products, grants. If you're seeking a loan from a bank, they're going to ask you for this. So there's a lot of reasons to do this, and we want you all to be successful. So please reach out to us and let us know. And I think we have a slide that Shelby's going to pop up here in a minute with all the contact info. I know that's one of the questions that popped up. So we'll make sure you can reach out to all of us.
Yeah, and the
just
other side too, behind getting into a getting into a good record keeping system, like QuickBooks or something, it makes finding that past history information a lot easier as well. A lot of smaller facilities, and I mean a lot of small businesses in general, will manage by Excel spreadsheet. And when you need to compile information across multiple timelines, it just makes it a little bit more difficult. So just something to help make things easier for you too as you move along.
right. And then two last things before we wrap up here that came up when person said, well, we have a plant that only does custom kill up to 6 animals a week, and we're fairly profitable. And that goes back to what we're saying is it depends on what your business model is and who you're serving and the like. And that's why Chris and I are on board, and the rest of the technical assistance network with niche meat processing and AMSA and AMP and all of the folks that are involved with it. We're kind of here to help you work through that. So and then Martin says, how the heck do you spell Meritrax?
It's MERIT and then TRAX.
All right, good. Well,
I'll
I
add
think
too,
folks,
Dave.
yep,
One thing I want to add too, Dave, is don't wait too long to transition from your shoebox or your Excel spreadsheet to some real software. The longer you go in your business, the harder it is to transfer. It's a lot of data entry and data input. So start sooner than later on your transition to good financials and good financial systems.
Right. And I'm sure a lot of people do have accountants that they work with, and they are also would be willing to help you make that transition too.
Great. All right, guys, any last comments you want to make before we wrap it up?
Just thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate this. You have our contact information if somebody wants to visit with us in private. That's wonderful. We welcome that. But again, you two gentlemen are always professionals, Dave and Chris. And I know there's a lot of professionals in the audience too, but thank you for your time. And of course, we're all here to benefit the industry, and we appreciate the time you got to spend with us today.
Great. We appreciate it, guys. And again, you'll be getting us a 2-question survey. So please give us feedback on what we covered today, but also what you'd like to see forward. Just a teaser, we do have a couple of roundtables coming up in February. We're putting together one on the remote meat grading system. So we'll have information on that. We're also going to do a follow-up on some mental health issues, particularly targeting more specifically to meat and poultry processors. So those are 2 that we have on track for February. And again, please, Chris, and my contact information is up there. Reach out to us, because that's why we're here, is to work with you and kind of help you through and to connect you with the right resources as you move forward. So with that, that's all I got. Chris, anything else?
Thank you all very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all again.
So, okay, have a great rest of your afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.